Welcome to the deep dive, where we take source material and really unlock the essential knowledge waiting inside.
Hmm.
Today's discussion is very focused. We're drawing from these incredibly comprehensive study guides created by the You Need Faith in Jesus team,
That's right.
and we're going to be immersing ourselves in the book of Psalms.
We are. We're continuing a journey really through book 2 of the Psalms,
Right.
which is Psalms 42 through 72.
And these are often called the Exodus Psalms, right?
Exactly. And our study notes from the You Need Faith in Jesus team really highlight why. Just like the Exodus story, this whole section is just, it's saturated with these themes of national ruin, of really deep distress.
So these are cries for help.
Yes, these are the songs of a people in overwhelming trouble crying out for God's rescue and ultimately his restoration.
And right in the middle of all that trouble, we find today's focus, Psalm 46. And this one is what's monumental. It might be the greatest single declaration of unshakable, rock-solid confidence in the entire Bible.
I would agree. It's an anthem for stability in a world that feels incredibly unstable.
So what's our mission here today? What do we want to understand by the end of this?
Well, our mission, and we're being guided directly here by the commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team, is to get to the very foundation of that confidence.
Okay.
How does this ancient song take what feels like overwhelming chaos? The earth is literally shaking in this song.
Right. Natural disasters, political chaos.
All of it. And how does it transform that into an anchor of faith for a believer? So we're going to break down every verse segment that the guide provides. We'll look at the language, the history, the prophetic vision.
And the goal is for you, the listener, to walk away with more than just understanding.
Exactly. We want you to have actionable steps for finding real security in a world that, seems to be defined by fear.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the very beginning with the title itself,
Yes, the title. It's not just a name, it's a set of instructions.
like a stage direction.
Precisely, it reads, "To the chief musician for the sons of Korah, a song upon Alamoth." And these seemingly small details are actually profound instructions for worship.
Okay, so let's start with the who. The sons of Korah. The source material we have from the You Need Faith in Jesus team notes this is much more than just, naming the band.
Oh, absolutely.
Why is their lineage so critical to understanding this psalm?
The study notes remind us that the sons of Korah were a specific line of Levites. They were chosen by King David himself to lead the organized, structured worship in the temple.
So this immediately tells you something about the song's purpose.
It tells you this was not meant for quiet, private devotion. This was for communal declaration. This was a public, organized, corporate affirmation of faith.
But there's a deeper level here, isn't there, in their family history?
Yes, and this is where it gets really powerful. Their family history, as you said, is rooted in this dramatic rebellion and divine judgment.
This goes all the way back to the book of Numbers.
All the way back. Their ancestor, Korah, led one of the most famous, most catastrophic rebellions against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness.
And the judgment was severe.
Incredibly, Korah and his followers were swallowed alive by the earth. It was a direct and terrifying judgment from God.
So the fact that his descendants, centuries later, are not just spared, but are elevated to the most sacred task in the temple leading worship is just stunning.
It's a powerful testament to the theme of Psalm 46 itself. It proves that God delivers and redeems. He can restore even the most condemned legacy.
Wow, so that completely reframes the whole song.
It has to.
It's being sung by a community whose very existence is proof that God is a refuge.
Yes,
They're literally living the testimony they're singing about.
absolutely. When this choir stands up and sings, "God is our refuge and strength," they are singing a truth that has been verified by their own family survival and restoration. It makes the declaration intensely personal.
And historical. It's not just an abstract idea.
Not at all. Now, add to that the musical instruction. It says, "upon Alamoth."
Okay, so what does Alamoth mean? The commentary explains this is a technical term.
It is. Our study notes from the You Need Faith in Jesus team suggest two main interpretations. First, it likely indicates a higher register, a treble setting,
So, high voices.
perhaps soprano voices, or maybe instruments tuned to a higher pitch. The second interpretation connects to the root word alama, which means maiden or virgin.
Which would also point to young, clear, high voices.
Exactly. So think about the complete picture here. This powerful declaration of faith isn't being mumbled. It's being sung loudly, clearly, in a high, arresting pitch.
By a whole community that knows redemption firsthand.
And it's organized. It's an exercise in intentional, high-stakes excellence.
And that intentionality is the takeaway for us.
That's the application. The You Need Faith in Jesus team strongly notes the importance of bringing excellence and purpose into our own engagement with God.
It reminds me of that verse they cite.
Yes, from 1 Chronicles chapter 15, verse 21 in the King James Version. And Matithia, and Eliphalah, and Micniah, and Obed-Edom, and Jeiel, and Azaziah with harps on the Sheminith to excel.
To excel. It's about bringing your best.
Yes. We are called to offer our worship, our faith, our lives with that same care and conscious effort. The title itself is telling us to prepare our hearts and our highest talents for this declaration.
So with that really powerful context set, the psalm just launches right into its core statement. This is the bedrock of everything else.
It is. This is the foundational declaration. Everything that comes after it, all the chaos, all the conflict, has to be measured against the certainty of this first statement. We have to quote it in full from the King James Version.
Psalm 46, verse 1 from the King James Version. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble.
Our study material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team breaks this down into 3 critical concepts, all describing God's immediate role.
Let's start with the first one, refuge.
Okay, so the Hebrew word here is machaseh, and it means a shelter, a secure retreat, a place of hope. It really carries this imagery of a fortified place.
Like a high tower or a fortress.
Exactly. It's a place you actively run to for protection from some kind of external threat.
So it's a defensive word. It makes you think of a desperate dash for safety when a storm just suddenly hits. It's protection from the world outside.
It is, but if God were only a refuge, we would just be hiding all the time.
Right.
And that's why the second term is so vital. He is our strength.
Okay, strength.
The Hebrew here is aus. It implies physical power, inner might, ability. This is the fortitude that allows a believer to endure the trouble, not just retreat from it.
Ah, so it's not just hiding, it's being equipped while you're in the shelter.
Perfectly put. Strength lets us stand firm inside the refuge, ready to face the world again when the storm passes, because we know we have this internal divine resilience.
So he protects us from the outside with the refuge, and he equips us for the trial with the strength. It's incredibly comprehensive.
It is. But that third phrase,
A very present help in trouble.
this is the real game changer. And our sources from the You Need Faith in Jesus team put a massive emphasis right here.
Why is it so important?
The phrase very present in the King James is trying to capture the intensity of the Hebrew. The word for very is malad, and it modifies the word for help. It means abundantly, mightily, exceedingly available.
So God isn't some distant passive observer?
Not at all, or just a faint hope for the future. He is readily available and easily found exactly when the moment of greatest distress, the trouble strikes.
Okay, that concept of divine immediacy is beautiful, but I feel like I have to challenge it just based on the reality a lot of people listening might experience.
Please do.
If God is a very present help, why does it so often feel like his help is delayed? I mean, our trouble is immediate, but sometimes the deliverance takes months or even years. How does the commentary reconcile very present with that lived experience of a long crisis?
That is a critical, honest question. And the study notes really tackle this by making a distinction between God's presence and our desire for immediate gratification or resolution.
Okay.
The promise is that he is present and available immediately, not that the trouble immediately vanishes.
So think of it this way.
The moment you enter the trial, he is already there offering you the refuge from verse 1 and the strength from verse 1. His presence is the immediate help. It means the trouble cannot utterly overcome you, even if it continues.
So the presence is the primary form of immediate help. It's not about the instant removal of the problem,
No,
but the instant availability of the divine resource within the problem.
precisely. And this unparalleled access to the divine is what defines the covenant relationship. Our source material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team cites Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 7 in the King James Version.
Let's hear it.
For what nation is there so great, who have gods so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for?
So nigh unto them. That nearness, that availability is what makes the faith unique.
It is. And that's why the You Need Faith in Jesus team teaches that this demands an active response from us.
So let's get practical. What does this foundational declaration mean for us when fear or anxiety or a crisis just hits us out of nowhere? What's the very first step?
The primary practical step is what we could call immediate response.
Okay.
When you're facing those overwhelming circumstances, the practical action is to consciously and immediately turn to God. It means you stop striving in your own power. You halt that cycle of panic thoughts.
And you consciously choose him as your anchor.
Yes. The language of run to the refuge suggests that faith is an immediate, decisive movement toward that divine resource, and it means rejecting self-reliance. David does this in Psalm 62 when he declares, "Truly my soul waiteth upon God. From him cometh my salvation."
It's a radical, immediate reliance.
That is what verse 1 demands of us.
That sets a powerful stage. But you mentioned earlier, Psalm 46 deals with threats that feel, well, cosmic, the earth shaking, the world dissolving. Before we jump to the tranquil river in verse 4, we really need to understand the scale of the threat this refuge is supposed to protect us from.
That's a necessary bridge, you're right. While our outline skips ahead, the whole foundation of the psalm is built on the chaos described in verses 2 and 3. The commentary helps us paint that picture.
So set that scene for us. What is this confident declaration standing against?
It's standing against total upheaval. Verse 2 says, "Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea."
And then verse 3 continues it.
It does. "Though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof." Selah.
I mean, that is an image of absolute primal chaos. Earthquakes, tsunamis, the very foundations of existence are just dissolving.
It is the collapse of reality itself. Think about it. Mountains. They symbolize permanence, stability, ancient power. And in this verse, they are literally dissolving into the sea.
And the sea, in ancient thought, often symbolized chaos, hostility, untamed force.
Exactly. And the waters aren't just moving. They are roaring and troubled. The deep dive notes from the You Need Faith in Jesus team point out this isn't just about geological disaster. It represents any crisis, personal or global, that makes you feel like the ground under your feet has just vanished.
So the believer, having just declared God their immediate refuge in verse 1, looks at this total cosmic collapse and says, "Therefore will not we fear."
Yes.
That confidence is just stunning.
And it's only possible because they've shifted their anchor. They're no longer anchored in the visible physical world of earth and mountains. They're anchored in the invisible spiritual reality of God's presence.
And that transition from the external chaos
Verses 2
is what brings us so dramatically to the image of internal covenant peace in the next segment.
Exactly.
So we move from these roaring, chaotic, destructive seas to an image of profound tranquility in life. The commentary we're following really focuses on this sudden, almost jarring, shielded environment.
Precisely. The psalmist pivots from external, overwhelming, turbulent water to a source of internal, quiet, life-giving water. It's a brilliant literary technique to contrast the world's reality with God's reality.
Let's look at the full text of verse 4, which describes this tranquility.
It's Psalm 46, verse 4 in the King James Version. "There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High."
The river is the centerpiece. But what's so interesting is that Jerusalem geographically is known for lacking a major river. So why is this image so potent?
Well, our study notes from the You Need Faith in Jesus team emphasize that historical and geographic reality. Jerusalem depended on the Gihon Spring. It was a relatively small, concealed water source.
You had to get to it through tunnels, like Hezekiah's tunnel.
Exactly. So unlike Babylon or Egypt, which sat on these massive, visible, world-dominating rivers, Jerusalem had this quiet, often hidden, but constant flow.
So the river here isn't meant to be read as some massive world-changing flood.
No, it's a subtle, constant, secure supply. And that's the spiritual symbolism. The river represents the constant, quiet, and life-sustaining presence and provision of God.
And it brings gladness.
The You Need Faith in Jesus team points out that this stream brings gladness, joy, and spiritual life to the city of God, which represents the community of believers.
So the world's rivers can rage and destroy.
Like in verse 3.
But God's river flows gently and sustains.
Exactly. Even when the forces of chaos are raging outside the walls, the life source within is guaranteed.
That is such a powerful distinction. It suggests that our spiritual sustenance isn't always dramatic or loud, but it's constant and dependable regardless of the noise outside.
It speaks to the faithfulness of God's supply. It flows to the city of God, which is the place of his covenant dwelling, and that's ultimately fulfilled in Christ and in you, the believer.
So the stability of our inner life isn't based on external circumstances at all.
No, it's based on this quiet internal flow of divine provision.
The idea that this quiet stream brings gladness, stands in such sharp opposition to the fear that's induced by the roaring waters. It's a choice, isn't it?
It is a choice between the external turmoil and the internal tranquility. And that tranquility is guaranteed by God's physical location within the city, which brings us right to the foundational statement in verse 5.
Right. The security of the city, and by extension the believer, isn't in its walls or its armies.
Yeah,
It's in the divine resident.
absolutely. Our study material identifies God's dwelling as the ultimate factor. Let's quote the King James Version text in full.
This is Psalm 46, verse 5 from the King James Version. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early.
God is in the midst of her. That's the core guarantee. It's the reason why the city, the believer, can withstand that cosmic chaos we talked about.
Our identity, our center, is anchored in God.
And the first consequence of that centering is the declaration, she shall not be moved.
Now, when the psalmist says, shall not be moved, does that mean the city won't experience any difficulty at all? Or is it a promise against, say, ultimate destruction?
That's a great question, and our source material is really precise here. It's a statement of certainty against ultimate collapse.
Okay.
Remember verses 2 and 3, the mountains are shaking, difficulties will come. But the promise is that the city, because God is her center, will not be utterly toppled, uprooted, or removed from its place.
So you might feel the earthquake, but the anchor holds.
It's the difference between being shaken and being destroyed, a crucial nuance for anyone listening. The shaking is real, but the foundation remains.
And that foundation anchors the second part of the verse.
Yes, the promise of prompt intervention. He shall help her, and that right early.
We talked about very present help in verse 1. How does right early amplify that idea here in verse 5?
Well, the You Need Faith in Jesus team explains that right early often refers to the concept of the morning watch or the dawn. Historically, ancient armies would often launch their attacks just before dawn to take advantage of the darkness. The reference to right early implies that God's help arrives at the moment of the greatest threat,
Just as despair seems to be setting in.
at the transition from darkness to light. It denotes an intervention that is timely, effective, and perfectly synchronous with our need.
So it's not just quickly, but optimally quickly. Sometimes right at the breaking point of the crisis, like the light just breaking over the horizon.
That's the essence of the timing. It's timely deliverance. And this leads us to the practical application for stability.
What are the actionable steps we can take to claim this stability when our world feels like it's shaking?
The practical application here is to anchor your identity.
Okay.
When you feel overwhelmed, you have to consciously recognize that your fundamental stability, your guarantee that you shall not be moved, comes entirely from God's presence being the center of your life.
So you have to actively rest in that center.
Yes. It means shifting your focus from the raging external waters to the quiet, constant flow of that spiritual river we talked about in verse 4. You do this knowing your help will arrive at the most necessary moment, right early.
It's a call to confident rest.
Built on the certainty of Christ's indwelling presence, which is the ultimate fulfillment of the city of God.
We've moved from personal refuge through cosmic chaos to internal stability, and now the psalm makes this final sweeping pivot to the external world of human affairs and conflict.
It does. The psalmist leaves the metaphorical chaos of the sea and addresses the very real, immediate threats posed by political powers and international rage.
And this next section is all about putting those global events into their proper divine perspective.
It is. Our study notes from the UNFIJ, well, from the team, they emphasize the stark contrast that's drawn in verse 6.
Let's hear the full text of verse 6 from the King James Version. It presents the peak of human turmoil against really divine ease.
It's Psalm 46, verse 6, King James Version. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted.
Look at the sheer energy on the human side of that verse.
It's frantic. The heathen, which just means the non-covenant nations, often hostile powers, they raged with this intense, threatening anger.
And the kingdoms were moved. That sounds like widespread governmental instability, upheaval.
It's what we see in the headlines every single day. Political unrest, volatility, powerful opposition, all this noisy, frantic, chaotic action.
And then you contrast that with the divine action.
Exactly. In opposition to this massive collective human effort, God acts effortlessly.
Yeah.
The verb used is simply, he uttered his voice.
No force of arms, no great war machine.
No lengthy debate. Just a simple expression of his will is all that is required.
And the result of that single, effortless utterance is absolute submission. The earth melted.
The Hebrew word there suggests the dissolving or running down, like wax near a flame. The commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team highlights that God's authority is so immense, so absolute, that a simple command causes all human power, all political maneuvering, all accumulated pride to instantly dissolve into nothing.
The noise of human rage is silenced by a single, quiet, divine word.
It's the ultimate perspective check. And we often give so much more weight to the noise of the nations than we do to the quiet authority of God.
Which is precisely the danger.
It is. The source material emphasizes this concept of God's effortless authority by connecting it to eschatology, the study of final things. They point out that the ultimate defeat of God's enemies will require no massive war. They cite 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8 from the King James Version.
Hey, what does that say?
It says, "The Lord will defeat his ultimate spiritual enemy with the spirit of his mouth."
A breath. A word. That's all that's sufficient.
It's enough to dissolve even the greatest cosmic opposition. So, if the single breath of God can dissolve the ultimate enemy, then the immediate challenges we face, political upheaval, economic instability, social tension, they must also be subject to that same effortless authority.
And that's the practical conclusion we have to draw.
It is. The practical step here is a perspective check. When you're watching global conflicts or political posturing that threatens your personal sense of peace, the action is to anchor your trust somewhere else.
Not in political solutions or human leaders.
Or the frantic energy of the news cycle. You're called to lift your gaze above the raging sea of human affairs to the God whose sovereign word can dissolve any opposition. We resist the temptation to panic by focusing on the King whose command is law.
It's a call to trust in the divine long game.
Knowing that no temporary human power can stand against the voice of the Creator, and that ultimate peace is the subject of the final verses provided in our guide.
So the psalmist issues this explicit, bold invitation.
He does. He invites us, the observer, to recognize God's hand at work in history, to look at the consequences of that divine voice.
Let's read the first part of that invitation, which is verse 8.
It's Psalm 46, verse 8, King James Version. "Come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations he hath made in the earth."
The invitation is so direct. Come, behold, we're called to be witnesses.
Witnesses to God's sovereign power manifesting in human history. And that word, desolations, is vital. Our study notes clarify that these aren't random acts of destruction.
No.
They're calculated righteous judgments, and they're intended to end human arrogance, rebellion, and conflict. They're the painful but necessary acts of demolition required to clear the stage for true, lasting peace.
It's the divine method of clearing the field of all strife.
Exactly. And the glorious result of this divine intervention is detailed in verse 9, which paints this incredible picture of God as the ultimate final peacemaker.
Let's hear it. Psalm 46, verse 9, in the King James Version.
"He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow, and cutteth the spear in sunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire."
This is a vision of comprehensive disarmament.
It is. God doesn't just broker a temporary ceasefire. He establishes peace through absolute decisive action. He doesn't just stop the armies.
He dismantles the very capability for conflict.
Yes, the bow, the spear, the chariot, these were the most advanced tools of military power in the ancient world. They represent all offensive and defensive capability.
And God just neutralizes them.
Utterly. He breaketh the bow, removing long-range attack. He cutteth the spear in sunder, taking away close-range weapons. And he burneth the chariot in the fire, destroying the symbol of mobility and rapid force.
It's a promise of total, final cessation of human warfare.
Achieved by divine decree. And this action, this termination of conflict, is powerfully linked in our source material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team to one of the most famous prophecies of peace.
You're talking about Isaiah.
Indeed. They draw the connection to Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4 from the King James Version.
"And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more."
That Isaiah passage moves beyond just destruction and into transformation.
Right. God doesn't just leave broken tools on the ground. He repurposes the instruments of death into tools of life.
Swords into plowshares for farming, spears into pruning hooks for the harvest. That shift from destruction to constructive transformation is the ultimate expression of God's sovereignty.
So his judgments, the desolations, they aren't the end goal.
No, the goal is everlasting peace and productivity, where nations literally forget how to wage war. This vision confirms that God's ultimate goal is the transformation of the earth under his perfect rule.
And this brings us to the final necessary practical step for us as believers who are still living in the middle of all the chaos before that final piece is fully realized.
The final practical step is to trust in peace. We are called to actively trust that God is working right now to dismantle the sources of strife.
Not just globally.
Not just globally, but personally. Within our own hearts, our families, our communities, we trust that God can disarm the bows and spears that cause pain in our internal lives. Our anger, our anxiety, our tendency toward relational strife.
And establish his rule of peace there, too.
Yes, this belief empowers us to actively seek reconciliation and to trust in God's ability to end conflict in every single sphere of our lives.
That is such a crucial link. Realizing that the God who makes wars cease globally is the same God who can make strife cease internally.
It's the application of total sovereignty to total life. This psalm teaches us that faith is not a passive retreat from the world's problems.
No.
It's an active declaration of God's reality over and above all opposition, both external and internal.
We have really covered a lot of ground today. We've traced this journey from the immediate personal security offered by God as refuge, through the quiet covenant stability that we find in his presence in the midst of chaos,
To the ultimate global assurance of his sovereignty over all human conflict.
and the core message remains as firm as the rock that the city of God stands on.
It does. Faith in God is not defined by the absence of trouble, but by an active, confident, and immediate reliance on his presence right in the middle of it.
The security of the believer is founded entirely on this sovereign God.
The one who need only utter his voice to dissolve all opposition and establish his transformative peace.
So let's conclude with a consolidated review of those 4 practical steps we identified for you, the listener, based on the rich material provided by the You Need Faith in Jesus team's study.
Okay, number 1, immediate response. In anxiety or fear, consciously and immediately turn to God as your very present help. Run to the refuge immediately.
Recognizing that his presence is the first and most crucial form of help.
Exactly. Number 2, anchor your identity. Recognize that your stability is guaranteed by God's presence in the midst of you, ensuring you shall not be moved.
And actively draw from that quiet, constant flow of the spiritual river within.
Yes. Number 3, perspective check. When you're observing global or political chaos, remember that God's simple, uttered voice effortlessly dissolves the rage and posturing of nations.
So you anchor your trust above all human solutions.
And finally, number 4, trust in peace. Believe that God is actively working to dismantle the tools of strife globally and personally in order to establish his rule and that total final peace prophesied in Isaiah.
These principles are the practical outcome of walking in confidence. They teach us to seek that immediate refuge and trust in his sovereignty, just as the You Need Faith in Jesus team consistently teaches.
Think about that incredible power we saw in verse 6. The mere utterance of a voice melts the earth and scatters raging kingdoms.
Which brings us to our provocative thought to close this discussion, and it's drawn from that stark contrast. If God's power is so absolute that a single word can reduce global powers to melting wax, how often do we, by allowing ourselves to be consumed by worry and striving and panic, how often do we attribute more substantial and lasting authority to the noisy, frantic threats of the nations than we do to the quiet, sovereign word of God?
It really forces us to ask, what do we genuinely believe holds the ultimate authority in our lives? The God who speaks is infinitely greater than the world that rages. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth discussion.